Welcome back to Session 6 of our book study, Forgiving What You Can't Forget. It's hard to believe there's just one more session after this one. And I want to thank you for your perseverance on a difficult topic. You stayed the course. And through all the ups and downs that you've likely experienced while you've been processing these things that are hard to forget, you've taken the most important step in the process, the next one. See, I'm a golfer, and one of the most important lessons I've had to learn in golf is that when I make a bad shot, I hit it out of bounds, I card a triple bogey, I have to clear my head to take the most important shot, the next one. If I'm still focusing on what just happened, I'll likely make it worse with my next shot. But if I put all my effort into thinking through what comes next, I can often recover from what could have been a bad round. The same is true in the processing of our loss, our grief, our hurts, bitterness, self-doubts, and our pain. Will there be setbacks? Oh yeah. Will there be ups and downs? Yeah. But can you find a way forward through those difficulties? Absolutely. So whatever the last 5 weeks have revealed for you, whether you've had some moments that have challenged you or some moments that made you just want to run away, this week, stay focused on the work in front of you. It is necessary work and it requires our full attention. The advantage we have in moving forward is that God is always with us. And He wants to remind us in all things of His great love. As St. Paul said, neither death, nor life, neither angels, nor demons, neither our fears for today, nor our worries about tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. Of course, sometimes rather than being comforted by God's love and presence, we can find ourselves struggling with God. And if you find yourself feeling that way, know that it's perfectly normal and that God is okay with it. In fact, there is a ton of scripture that tells us that God is okay with us struggling with the way that He answers or doesn't seem to answer our prayers. Just read the Psalms or read one of my favorite books of scripture, Job. Job was a righteous man who trusted God completely. And then calamity hit and he lost everything. His children were killed in a tragic accident. His property was destroyed or stolen. He became sick and covered with painful sores. He sat in bitterness for his situation, and yet he still praised God. Now Job's friends came and sat with him, and then they all began trying to convince Job that he must have done something wrong. He must have sinned in some way to cause what is happening to him. As Job and his friends debate back and forth, Job maintains his innocence and says what is happening to him cannot be divine justice. Job's friends continue arguing with him and claiming that he must have sinned, or God would not be allowing any of this to happen. Well, Job tells his friends they don't know what they're talking about, and that God is allowing Job's suffering to happen for some reason unbeknownst to Job or his friends. So what do we do when we can't understand why God is allowing something to happen? What do we do when we feel let down by God? Well, fortunately, one of the things we can do is take it to God. Tell God how you feel. Trust me, the creator of the universe, the one who was there when the foundations of the earth were set in place, the one who led His people out of slavery, the one who rebuked King David, a man after His own heart, the one who took on ridicule, pain, suffering, and death for each one of us, He can handle you being frustrated with Him. You're not going to offend Him. In fact, He invites you into the conversation. And getting into that conversation might just start to reveal a bigger picture. You see, God has a much different perspective on those things that trouble us. That's because while we're playing checkers in this game of life, God is playing three-dimensional chess. He sees things we don't see. He knows things we don't know. And like one of those magic picture books that you're supposed to reveal a hidden picture inside, you find that when you try to find the picture by concentrating hard enough, you never get there. It's only when you allow your eyes to relax and you let go of the control that you're exerting to see the picture that you actually can see what had been there all along, but was hidden for a time. St. Paul wrote in his first letter to the Corinthians that now our knowledge is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only part of the whole picture. But when the time of perfection comes, when we're united with Christ once more, these partial things will become useless. He goes on to say, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. See, when life happens, when our plans are turned upside down, when we experience troubles that we weren't expecting, when tragedy strikes, there are two potential postures we can take. The first is that we can start asking, why, God? God, why am I stuck in this job I hate? God, why have my relationships failed over and over again? God, why did this terrible thing happen to me? Do you notice the fists? It's a natural reaction, but it has its limits. There is an alternative. Instead of asking, why, God, we can start asking, what, God? God, what do you want me to learn in this job I hate? God, what are you using this situation for in my life? God, what are the ways you are trying to shape me in this experience? God, what is it you are trying to teach me? You see, both why God and what God have their places. But notice that why God has the posture of trying to be in control and cling to something that we can't hold on to and can't fully understand. However, what God has the posture of being ready to receive. What God puts us in the receiving position and makes space for God to show up and to shape us to be more and more like Jesus. Why God sees every challenge as an obstacle to survive. What God, on the other hand, sees life and its challenges as an opportunity to be formed, as an opportunity to grow, and as an opportunity to trust that God knows more about our situation than we can possibly imagine. And really, what this is the choice between becoming better or bitter. C.S. Lewis reminds us to think of ourselves as a house that God is renovating. He says that while we think we know what work needs to be done, a spot of paint here, a nail in a loose floorboard there, maybe a new piece of furniture or two, God actually starts by knocking down all the walls. While this may confuse us and have us wallowing in our own pain, we are missing the point altogether. As Lewis says, you thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building you into a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. So where we see destruction, God actually sees construction. Now, let me be crystal clear here. God is not causing the pain in your life in order to rebuild you. However, because we live in a fallen and messed up world, there will be pain and suffering in this life. Troubles will come, tragedy will strike. But when those things happen, God will not let them happen in vain. Instead, He will leverage them for something greater. I've seen it in my own life so often that now I just expect it. When I was in high school, I was on a basketball team. I was good, I wasn't great, but I was definitely sixth-man material. Then we got a new coach my senior year, and for whatever reason, he decided that I couldn't help our team. So all of a sudden, I was riding the bench all the time and maybe getting some scrub time in the last minute or so of the game. I couldn't understand what was going on. Well, we had a game against one of our big rivals, and they had a guy that was 4 inches taller than me, and he was just destroying us. Nobody could stop him. Our coach kept putting different people on him, and he just scored left and right. So finally, out of desperation, I think, with about 6 minutes to go in the first half, the coach tells me to go in and cover this guy. Well, for the next 6 minutes, he didn't score a point. Every time they tried to get a pass to him, I knocked it away or stole it. When he did manage to get the ball and tried to take a shot, I blocked it, even though he was much taller than me. He tried to dunk, and I even went up and held onto the ball, keeping him from scoring and drawing a jump ball that went in our favor. So when halftime came, I was pumped. I knew that finally my coach had seen how I could help our team and that I was about to get a lot more playing time. I couldn't wait for the second half to start. But I waited in vain because I never saw another second of playing time in that game. I was heartbroken and confused, and I was angry. I felt that it was all for nothing. For the next several years, when I thought about that coach, my blood began to boil. I wished him ill, and I celebrated when he was no longer the coach at my old school. And then something changed. By age 25, I'd become a math teacher, and I was up at the board showing a problem to my students. Suddenly, everything from the top of my head to the bottom of my foot on my right side went numb. I was having a stroke. I was rushed to the hospital and had all sorts of tests run, and it was discovered that I had a heart condition that would require surgery. As I learned more about this condition, I discovered something about it that changed my perspective forever. Do you know where most young people who don't know they have this heart condition end up dying? On a basketball court. Now, I thank God for the choices of that coach. The guy that I wished ill and was angry at for so long may have actually saved my life. While I won't know the full picture until eternity, I know for certain that God was with me through it all. And while I don't believe what the coach did was out of his concern for my health, God has opened my eyes to his divine hand in the situation. Afterward, I started seeing his hand in other situations. I started asking, what God, instead of why God? And it helped me to focus on being better, not bitter. I had been bitter before. I know that. And as the author of our book rightly points out, bitterness doesn't have a core of hate, but rather a core of hurt. I was hurt, and it was manifesting itself in bitterness. But I hadn't yet considered the question that the author of our book asks. What if bitterness is actually a seed of beautiful potential not yet planted in the rich soil of forgiveness? Our friend Job I was telling you about earlier, he had every right to be bitter. He had lost everything that mattered in his life. His friends had turned on him and were telling him his sin was the cause of it all, that God was punishing him. Then a funny thing happened. God showed up. And God not only affirmed that none of what was happening to Job was his fault, but he affirmed Job's feelings of betrayal and bitterness. He tells Job's friends that he's angry with them for not speaking accurately about himself as Job had done. So he tells them that Job will pray for them and that he would accept Job's prayer on their behalf and would forgive them. And you know what Job did? He prayed for and forgave his friends. For Job, the bitterness he experienced was a seed of beautiful potential not yet planted in the rich soil of forgiveness. And Job 42:10 says that when Job prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes. In fact, the Lord gave him twice as much as before. Now hear my heart here. I'm not claiming that we will get rewarded in this life with prosperity for choosing forgiveness over bitterness. Far from it. But what I know for certain is that it will change your heart. Trusting in God for his provisions and for his understanding opens up amazing possibilities for how we process our hurt with others and with God. And it leaves me with this question. What if we were what God people? What if you saw each day, each challenge as an opportunity to experience God and his kingdom breaking through? It makes all the difference between letting God form you into the best version of yourself, looking more and more like Jesus, or remaining in bitterness. Remember, when you see God working on the cottage of your life, he is actually building a palace to reside in. He loves you more than you could ever know, and because of that amazing love, he won't leave you the way you are. He loves you too much for that. Allow him to shape you so that you can become the palace you were always meant to be. And that means trusting that what feels like destruction is actually the process of construction. And God, the master builder, is ready to make you a masterpiece. As Paul said, all that I know now is partial and incomplete. But then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. Let the one who knows you completely open your eyes to what he is doing in and through you in the good and the bad you encounter in this life. It is not in vain.